Redfin says there are 500,000 more sellers than buyers, and now they're saying home sellers are sitting on $700 billion worth of listings. Sounds like the market's collapsing, right? Well, not so fast. The headlines do sound dramatic, but they don't tell the whole story. So what we're going to do in today's episode is we're going to break down what's actually happening and what smart buyers should do now.
Redfin's been on a heater, Jeb. Last week, they went viral. Every doom and gloomer and financial analyst that tangentially likes to report on housing has been picking this up and blasting out the headline everywhere. So we're going to dig in on that. But just 1 week later, they liked the results and the clicks so much last week that they jumped in and topped themselves this week. So let's go through and see what they are saying. I meant to pull out, I've got my old book, my favorite one here back on the bookshelf, How to Lie with Statistics. This is essentially what they've been doing here. The underlying data is not wrong. We're going to look at it. We're going to put it in a little bit of different context where you can see that it absolutely supports this transition over towards a buyer's market, but not in any way in most markets. I mean, every market is unique. There are a couple markets here that we look at. I would say they're dead on with what they're saying. But most markets, it's a slow and steady transition to a buyer's market until affordability improves. So let's look at their first number. The one from last week stated they did an analysis and they came up with the fact that there are 500,000 more sellers than buyers. So they analyzed their data in terms of homes on the market. And for some reason, they got to a number. It wasn't actual MLS data. They got to a number that said there's like 900,000 more listings than there actually are on the market right now. And that was the seller's figure. And then they imputed a number based off of their data of how long it takes a person who's a serious buyer to start looking at listings on their website and close a transaction. That was their number for how many people are in the market. I don't think that either of those are super great measures because they're not super accurate. And most importantly, what we need to be able to analyze a number and what it's telling us is context. You get context from a period of time. They just came up with this methodology, rightfully knowing that it was going to get a bunch of clicks. Whereas if we had been doing their same numbers, their measure over the last 60 months, at least 60 months, going back to about 2019, we would have some context there of what does this mean and what is the shift. But they took some data. It is empirically grounded from their website, the data that they have, and they made a wonderful headline. They get a lot of views with it.
Well, let's talk about what that actually looks like. So what they have is they have a website that is basically traffic for buyers looking at property, right? So people searching for homes go to Redfin or Zillow or Realtor.com or what have you. And so what they've noticed based on their data is that they have more potential home buyers coming to the website, right, than maybe normal. And listings are sitting longer on the market. That's essentially where they're getting their data is, hey, homes are sitting longer. We've got more buyers looking at these listings and these listings aren't going under contract. So we've now turned that into a number of 500,000 people, which let's again, provide a little bit more context. High rate environment, right? We know interest rates are probably about where they were this time last year. Maybe we're a little bit higher, but pretty much in the same realm of where we were last year. The biggest difference is we've got more listings coming to the market over the last 5 to 6 months because of higher interest rates earlier than we did last year, right? So we had higher interest rates for a period of time, which listings come on the market, they sit a little bit longer. Housing affordability is an issue, but let's play the one that no one's talking about in seasonality, right? This is typically a time in the year when markets slow down. Kids are out of school, vacations, people are doing things. They're not necessarily grounded in buying a house this moment, right? And so I think all of that added in, yes, there's less activity in the market. I mean, I can talk to it about listings that I have. Got 4 listings I put on the market in the last 3 weeks, and there's activity on all of them. But you know, the offers are definitely less than they would have been otherwise. One property is getting multiple offers. The others are getting activity, but no offers. And so am I worried? Am I sitting here thinking, oh my God, the market's no, this is most agents in today's market haven't been in a normal market, right? I mean, that's what we're headed to and what we've been in. And so that is, you know, it's just changing.
Well, Jeb, all along. We started doing this 3.5 years ago.
Sure.
And what we've talked about is it all comes down to supply and demand. It's not hard to predict where prices are going moving forward. So we know supply is up. We have more people bringing homes to market, but it's still it's not an extreme amount of homes coming to market. The fact of the matter is that demand is low. And we always talk about there's two different parts of demand. In terms of determining what's going to happen with prices, it's able demand. So we always have willing demand. There's plenty of people that want to buy homes. All of you listening, whether you can afford or not, would like to buy a home. You're trying to educate yourselves on it. But at any given time, what the actual demand in the market is, how many people who can actually qualify want to buy and will pull the trigger on it. That number is low because affordability is low. Home prices are high. Rates are at the high end of what we've seen. And until that changes, unlikely to see an increase in demand, and we will likely continue to see elevated levels of supply, especially relative to the last 5 years. We're still nationwide not above 2019 levels, but we will progress there and we will get there. And if rates stay at this level, likely to be extended. For whatever reason, there's a small subset of viewers here that don't want to hear that the issue is rates. It's affordability. And rates are the thing that will move it. We've seen over the last year, every time that rates have moved below 6.5, applications pick up, homes under contract, and about 60 days later, homes selling have spiked. So spiked, it's all relative, right? Nothing like 21 and 22, but much higher than what we've seen throughout 24 and so far in 2025. And then we had a brief period last fall, late July, August, so early fall, where rates got under 6%, just a hair under 6%. And we saw very high application numbers. So it tells you that demand is out there. Affordability is a problem. And these numbers are sort of fantastic versions of what we already knew. I don't like their methodology where they're coming, but most important. So let's look at the second piece. This is the one they came out with today. They followed up, doubled down on it, said, hey, record high dollar value of homes listed for sale, $698 billion of homes listed for sale on the market. Like, right? Why would you ever talk about it in those terms when no one ever talks about it in those terms? If you look at the chart that they put in their release,
which we'll actually throw it on the screen here, yeah,
and you draw a trend line of what that looks like over the last, from 2012 going forward, when Redfin first started collecting the data, we're exactly where you would expect it to be, because over time, home prices go up. So if you have a consistent amount of homes on the market and prices go up 3% a year, every year you're going to have a new record dollar amount of homes on the market. So it also looks really, really good when you can say, well, 3 years ago, we had $300 billion of homes on the market, and now we have $700 billion of homes on the market. Well, you went from a record low to now what is a record high, but right on trend with where we would expect to be. So is it an issue? Is it something to be aware of? Is it something to watch? But it's a number that's already tracked. Who cares about the total dollar amount? We care about the absolute number of homes on the market and how that compares historically over time. And you specifically, we're going to get into this, you don't care about the national numbers. You care about your market. Your market could be undersupplied or oversupplied regardless of what these national numbers are saying. Then they threw in this one, 44% of listings are sitting for 60 plus days.
Ooh.
Crazy, right? You just talked about realtors haven't been in a normal market. They don't know what this feels like. Well, let's flip that on its head. That means 56% of homes, more than half of them, sell within the first 60 days. That's what you generally would expect. A good home priced right is going to sell fairly quickly. 44% lasting longer than 60 days. So we can have problem properties, bad locations, terrible condition. We can just have bad pricing. We can have a bad realtor, Jeb. That actually happens. Any number of those things. So seeing the change over time definitely tells you when that number is down at like 10% of homes, it tells you that no matter how bad the realtor, how awful the house, how awful the location, that's how strong the supply demand dynamics are, that they're moving. And we're not seeing that, obviously. So it's important to watch these trends over time, but you have to have context and you have to look at them over time. And most importantly, then look at them for you in your specific market and what it means for homes that you would be interested in.
And we've talked about it so many times, how real estate is local, right? I mean, 30%, it might actually be more now, but 30% of the unsold available inventory on the market at the moment is in 2 states. So once you take those 2 states away, inventory nationwide is well below where it would be on a normal basis. So in those two states, we're talking about Florida and Texas. So, with that being said, one of our, another fan of the show, friend of the show, been on here, Lance Lambert from Resi Club, another analyst that we follow data all the time, has a good way of breaking things down and helping people understand. And you can go through this chart, which we're going to throw here on the screen, and see that, yes, there are markets out there that are definitely buyers markets, right? And you're going to notice a lot of those are in the states that we just mentioned, Florida and Texas. And then we start transitioning into more stable markets, right? Which, based on this, some of those are DC, Philadelphia, Chicago, Kansas City, Virginia Beach, and so on and so forth. And then we move, and some of those are kind of moving up into the east, the Northeast. And then when you get into the Northeast, it's a seller's market from Baltimore to Providence, Rhode Island to New Brunswick to, Cleveland. Well, I guess Cleveland's not really in the Northeast, but Nassau County, Newark, all of these areas are really strong sellers markets. So if you're in one of those markets, you shouldn't really care what's happening in Southern California or what's happening in Texas. Yes, if you're, it provides a little bit more information, but the reality is it really comes down to what you're looking for, how things are priced. And to be completely honest, it's even those markets that say they're balanced markets and or buyers markets, it probably depends on the price point, right? If you get into a certain price point where you're looking at the median price point in that market or under, it's probably still competitive. I mean, take Orange County, for example. Things have definitely slowed here, but the median home price in Orange County now is around $1.2 million. Under 1.2, especially for a single family home, is still very, very competitive. Versus you get up in the 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. Okay, that's the new kind of move up buyer. Those still move. They're just not moving as fast as they were.
Well, Jeb, the Redfin has their chart here. San Diego, California, buyer's market. According to their methodology, it's up 14%, a 14% shift of sellers in excess of buyers. Well, I've got a listener to the show that we helped refinance. He bought in the middle of COVID. It shot up in value, refinanced his FHA to a conventional, got rid of his mortgage insurance. He's going to keep that as a rental. He's getting married, and now they want to buy a bigger home. So $900,000 house. That's low end move up, very high end first time buyer in the areas that he's looking. They've missed out on every property. Now, what's unique about those properties? He wants something very specific location wise, and his wife wants something turnkey. So those properties that are in better locations, better school districts, better condition are selling. Now, if he was open to fixers, if he was open to some different areas, probably wouldn't have that issue. So that's in a market that we're saying is a buyer's market. He is getting outbid on 3 properties. Every one of them, if I showed them to you, you'd be like, that's a nice house. I'd be happy to live there. So you can understand why. What I will say, we have a situation in Tennessee. Ben, another listener, sold his property, found a home. He says, I think this is the one. He goes, and it's been on the market for about 60 days. Listing says seller's motivated. I think we can do something there. They had 4 rounds of counters back, and they finally settled on a price 10,000 below. So it was a 400 and something. So 2-3% below. So that's really common what I'm seeing. Another in Florida, right? Florida is a buyer's market. You just go in and name your price. Another set of buyers outside of Tampa. And that perspective, they had 2 properties, 2 very similar properties. One that they preferred, the seller was totally unreasonable. And so after about 2 days of negotiations, they said, you have fun. We're going to go write an offer over here. And within a day, they got a number that both buyer and seller were happy with. So that's what we're seeing. It's almost a nice market if you know the market and you're open and flexible. But it depends on where you're at, what you're looking for, and how open you are to be able to negotiate.
Play devil's advocate. Another listener of the show reached out to me a couple months ago looking to sell his property in San Diego. And so referred him to a buddy down there, listed his house, and it's sitting on the market. Why? Why is that sitting on the market when you're saying that things are moving? Well, it's a studio near the beach in a condo association where there's others in the building listed, higher HOA fees. Most people don't prefer a studio property to begin with. And so it's unique in the sense that that type of property would already have less buyer demand, less interest to begin with. And then you go into a market with higher rate environment, HOA fees on the higher side. And now, it's one of those things that, there's less people out there looking for it. So you have to understand, you need to find a professional in your market, regardless of where you're looking, that understands not only the local market, but some of the nuances, why these things happen with certain properties, they don't happen with others. Why are single level homes maybe in a neighborhood fetching a higher price per square foot than something that's 2-story or what have you? Like, all of that stuff matters because it helps you as a buyer make better decisions, and be able to evaluate properties and think more strategic in making offers. So if you're in that process, you need a realtor anywhere in the country, you can reach out using that link in the description of the video. And if you're someone looking to go through the pre-approval process, you have questions about mortgages, questions about loans, wondering what's the right fit, that same link will get you in touch with Josh and the team, and we can guide you through the right process. So Josh, with that said, I think we should be clear here. The Redfin's headlines aren't wrong. They're not wrong. They're just a bit misleading in how that information is brought to the table.
The headline in the article is designed for clicks versus informing. The underlying data is not wrong, and it jives with what we're seeing anecdotally. What you just went through with your clients, what I just told you I'm seeing with clients, it definitely meshes up. It's just sensationalized. So don't look at that and think, hey, I'm going to go in and cut someone's price 20%. I'm going to ask them to pay all of the costs, and just know your market and know what is reasonable in your market. If Freddie down in San Diego thought he was going to roll into these and cut 5%, he would have been open for a rude awakening. But he knows the market. So I'll start, Jeb, but then you follow up with some advice here. I tell people in the current market, your first offer, don't fall in love with the first property unless you know for a fact it is the right
fall
property.
In love with any property.
Because
get your
that
heart broken.
First one, especially in the current market, that's sort of your price discovery. It's great that we said know your market, work with an expert realtor who can walk you through the data in your market. But you getting out and writing that first offer, seeing how quickly you get a response, what the response looked like, that's sort of that trial offer, that trial balloon that gives you a feel for it. So you're right. Never get hung up and fall in love with the first property. But definitely in this market, just know that that's your best education of where the market is at and what sort of power and flexibility you as a buyer are going to have. But that's my number one piece of advice based off of this and where the market is shifting. What are some other things that you're advising buyers to do and look?
Well, Josh, I want to speak to that. I have some buyers selling a property here in Huntington Beach. They're buying up in LA. And it's a weird market. So they're selling here for 1.6 something, buying up there. They're actually buying a smaller property in LA. They're having to commute for work, so they wanted to be closer. And they're in the 1.4-ish price range. Every property, multiple offers. Every listing is on the market for about a week and a half, 10 days before the agent's actually reviewing offers. So it's one of these things where they're trying to get offers. They're trying to get multiple people bidding against one another. Weird environment. But that said, they're also telling me, hey, we fell in love with this. I'm like, no, you can't falling in love with a property impacts your ability to negotiate, right? So once you fall in love with something, you're willing to do things that you probably wouldn't otherwise do if you were taking a more logical approach. Now, I realize it's easier for me to say coming from the outside because it is an emotional process and it gets justified logically through these things. But when you can, that's why it's good to have an agent on your side that will provide the logic piece of it. But that being said, I would say it's rare, going back to what you said, Josh, to get somebody's offer accepted on the very first time going out as a buyer. I mean, honestly, like I make offers for clients all the time, and rarely do we get the first offer accepted. And I don't think that's weird. I don't think it's bad. I think, all people end up finding the right property. I'm one of those believers that, hey, listen, if you missed out on this, there's something better. And I realize what that sounds like, but it's true. But I think you still have to go into the market armed today, knowing what's going on. Like you got to get those feels on the first offer. Okay, we didn't get our offer accepted. Why? Sometimes hey, it was price. We didn't negotiate strong enough. Sometimes you go over the price and you didn't get it. Well, it's hard. So some of those things is a little bit of trial and error. But I think, again, it goes back to kind of putting your best foot forward in making offers. A lot of people have that mindset is I don't want to overpay. I don't want to do this. Understood, but you still need to go in with a strong offer. I mean, we had an offer coming on a property yesterday that we're not even responding to. on one of our listings because the offer came in with them trying to be strong hand in negotiation, and we had another offer. So why are we even going to respond to that? So if you're serious about the property, come in, make a reasonable offer based on comps, not what you think is going to happen to the market, not what you think is going. I have people every single year say, well, this is the top. This is the top. Even me, Josh, bought a property in 2023. This is the top. You're buying at the top. Well, guess what? It's up 12, 13% in 18 months from the time I bought it. So the top moved up. So again, it's all about buying when it's the right time in your life. It's not about, making irrational decisions and, or guessing. Just do what you can do with the information you have, and do it strategically and not trying to, just guess, I guess is the right way to say it.
It's you said specifically to that LA market, it's a strange market. I think every market everywhere is strange right now, and they are all different and unique. And if you're listening to this show, you are probably a first time-ish buyer. Even if you're a move up, most folks that are listening to the audience here are looking at buying their first home. So some parts of the country, that means a $250,000 purchase. Sometimes that means an $850,000 purchase. If you're in that sort of sweet spot for first-time home buyers, that's where the majority of the competition is right now, even in a down market. If you're in Miami, the worst market here on Redfin's list, the people who have the most power are people wanting to buy, luxury estates, or probably mid-level luxury. The trophy properties are going to sell regardless. But the most buyers, if demand is muted right now, the most demand is at that first time buyer process, because what we talk about here on the show, you get to a point in life, you get married, you have a kid, you get a job promotion, you're feeling good. You don't want to live in an apartment. You don't want to live with your parents. All of that tells you it's time to move. So just be aware and know your market. Do your research. Educate yourself with shows here. Read the headlines. Read what Redfin's putting out there, but dig in and see what the numbers actually mean. And you want to do your homework. You want to get a rock solid pre-approval so that you have the financing out of the way. We know how much do I have to have? What's my monthly payment look like? There's no question I'm going to get approved. You've done your research with your realtor. You've made an offer or two. You've got a feel for the market. Now you know what's important to you, where the market is at. I'm going to be able to cut. I'm going to have to be in a competitive bidding because I want the right school district with the perfect home. But you have all of that knowledge so you can make informed, empowered decisions. But it really is, do the homework up front, because buying a home and getting a mortgage is a stressful process if you don't. When we do it right, our clients walk away going, wow, that really was easy. It was a non-event because we did the hard work when there was no stress. There was no property on the line. So from that perspective, that's my big advice. It's not bad data. It's not incorrect data. Do your research, take it into account, and know how it applies to your market, your price point, the areas and the neighborhoods that you're wanting to buy, and work with solid professionals.
And one of our goals here with the channel is to continue to grow, to continue to impact first-time home buyers in a positive way. So if you're finding any value in the show, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you know somebody's buying a home that could benefit from this, sharing is the best way to help us grow. So we would appreciate you doing that. If you'd like to get in touch with Josh and the team here, myself, you can use that link in the description of the video. But until next time, make sure you buy right, borrow smart, build wealth. Adios.
Amigos.